which was a product idea that you can actually manage complex technology products remotely out of India, which created a $2 billion enterprise. The second was transforming of HCL Technologies on an axis of employees first. By energizing employees, you can actually transform the fortunes of the company, which led HCL Technology market cap to grow from a low of $1.4 billion to a high of $20 billion. The third cycle of innovation is currently I am undertaking right now, which is very exciting. How do you reach 3 million children in rural schools and teach them maths and English through 200,000 teachers who cannot speak English and do not know maths? And how do you convert the fortunes of those students where only 15% of grade 3 children can count beyond 99 and only 7% can read simple English sentences? How can you transform their lives in 24 months? That's the innovation, which is the third innovation. The fourth, which is very exciting, is I'm investing and mentoring a lot of very interesting startups, technology-led startups, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with them. Most of them are copycat, once again, but some of them are interestingly breaking out and redefining their industry spaces, which is what the exciting part of being in India is. There is a very interesting research which was done by Harvard and MIT together. And they interviewed over a period of 6 years, so it was quite an intense research, 300 executives who were known as innovators, entrepreneurs, which included Steve Jobs and Larry Pages of the world and Jeff Bezos on the world, and included a lot of other executives who had started as entrepreneurs but did not succeed. And the report goes into rims and reams of paper in terms of what does innovation mean and what does it take to succeed. But there are two very interesting takeaways, which is where I want to begin this conversation. The first takeaway from that report is the fact that the 15% of them succeeded. 85% of those 3,000 failed. So what defined the difference between the 15% entrepreneurs, all innovators, between success and failure? And the first point was those 15% who succeeded never delegated creative work. So the innovation is not something you delegate. Innovation is not something you supervise. Innovation is not something you manage. Innovation is something you do. Creative work is something you do. The second conclusion, which was very interesting on similar lines, was that these 15% of the people spent 50% more time on creative work, on innovation, compared to the rest. Now, those were pretty interesting conclusions, and my experiences over these 4 phases of execution on innovation, or 4 cycles of execution on innovation, is quite similar. So therefore, the question I ask myself, which is interesting, is are you born innovative, or can you learn innovation? And that's a critical question, because while our heroes are Steve Jobs and Larry Pages of the world, and we constantly saying, can we innovate in India to leapfrog, and all these kind of questions. So the fundamental question to that is, can we learn innovation? And my big answer to that is, of course, yes. Like you learn leadership, like you learn people management, like you learn a skill of leading your businesses through financial astuteness and financial monitoring, you can also learn innovation if you put your heart to it. So innovation is a skill you can learn. Innovation is a skill the company can learn. And that is exactly in whether it was my startup or it was HCL Technology, that's what we embedded, and that's what we saw as results. So my first premise to all of you is innovation is nothing foreign. Innovation is not meant for startups. Innovation is meant for each one of us. Now that's easy to say. The question is, how can I become more innovative? How can I hire more innovative people, and how can my company become more innovative? As I said, I don't know the right answer, but based on my experience and based on some of the research which I have read, I came to a conclusion there are 5 habits. If you incorporate these 5 habits, I promise you your journey on innovation as an individual, as a manager, as a leader, and as a company will start at an accelerated pace. The first habit is what I call the habit of aspiration. One thing I am very clear about in life is that you and me and everybody will always underperform our aspiration. Always. Therefore, if your aspiration is low and you underperform that aspiration, there is no future for you or for me. So the first aspect of innovation is to have an aspiration which is impossible. Now, when you look at a magician, and a magician performs a magical trick in front of you, you say, impossible. The reason you use the word impossible when the magician cuts somebody in half or makes somebody fly in the air is because it is outside your boundaries of logic and reason. It is within the boundaries of logic and reason of the magician, but it is outside your boundaries of logic and reason. And therefore, if you really want to innovate, if you really want to achieve the impossible because you have a high aspiration, you have to spend significant amount of time outside the boundaries of logic and reason. And there is no way you can spend significant time outside the boundaries of logic and reason if you're happy. Mahatma Gandhi came to the shores of India in 1915 with the idea called non-violence, which he had practiced for 7 years in South Africa. So here is an innovative, inspirational leader with an innovative, inspirational idea, landing on the shores of India in 1915, that the question is, why did it take 32 years for India to gain independence? And the reason is that the aspirations of the Indian population was not to get freedom for many, many years. It's only when Gandhi and other leaders could create that aspiration that we want to be free, the change happened. So the first aspect is, what is your aspiration? What is the aspiration of your organization? And what is the aspiration of your team? So when I got an opportunity of leading HCL at $700 million of revenue, the aspiration which we defined for ourselves is we will beat IBM. And everybody laughed at us because it was ridiculous. Here is a company which is losing mind share, market share, and talent share, and talking about beating IBM. But that aspiration galvanized the whole organization, and that's what we did. And that's how our revenues grew from $700 million to $5.6 billion, because our aspirations was very high. So the first thing which you need to do is aspirations. If you take Steve Jobs' life history, it is about multiple failures on his own aspirations. His aspirations, he never surrendered those aspirations. So the first start point in any business or any individual is, how big is your aspirations? How impossible is your aspirations? Because that is the start point for innovation. Because the incremental disease in our country, the incremental disease in our managers, the incremental disease in our organization is rampant, and that prevents us from aspiring big, and that is the reason we don't move the needle. We keep using the word innovation for every small thing and everything we copy from the West, but we don't innovate. The second aspect of skill which you need to build on innovation is what we call the connecting the dots. Remember, I said that the good leader is a guy who spends significant amount of her time exploring and not supervising. If we go back to Steve Jobs, and you look at his success, it's very interesting that he succeeded because he combined 3 elements of experience. The 3 elements of experience was the fact that he spent significant amount of time in India, and therefore he had the sights and sounds of India which were unique, and he understood what experiences and human touch was all about. He spent significant time learning calligraphy, and therefore he understood that science pretty well. And he was obsessed about the art of machine from Benz, Mercedes-Benz. He combined the 3 experiences to create an art object called iPhone, iPads, and iPods, which nobody else imagined because they never had that experience. So the ability to connect the dots is a very critical aspect of innovation. And that is the reason it is important for the leader who sits right on the top of the team to do that, because he can see or she can see the dots which nobody else can see. Peter Drucker, many years ago, 30 years ago, said something very fundamental in this premise. And he said that it is not about finding the right answers, but asking the right questions. And therefore, the role of the leader is not about giving answers, but asking questions. And how many of you are practicing what Peter Drucker said? And therefore, the start of the innovation comes in framing the right questions and asking your team to solve the right question. As long as we keep on solving the incremental question, how am I going to increase 5%? How am I going to add 1% in market share? How am I going to reduce cost by 5%? There is no innovation possibility, and therefore, ability to connect the dots and working that is very critical. You take Salesforce.com, and it's a great example and a great friend of mine, and I was talking to him, and he said that he was inspired from Amazon and eBay, and he created the whole idea of cloud, which many others followed. So unrelated dots, when connected, create the second aspect of innovation. The third is, and we miss this, I don't know why, is the whole idea of experimenting. I don't know how many of you are science students. I am. And one of the things in experimentations in school we learned in physics and chemistry, and especially in chemistry and biology, is to state your hypothesis. And once you state your hypothesis, then you test, you conduct experiment to prove your hypothesis right or wrong. And once your hypothesis is proven right and wrong, you learn from it and frame another hypothesis, then another hypothesis. So the discovery of a new element or a discovery of a new chemical or a discovery of a new product is a series of hypotheses proven wrong and then one hypothesis proven right. So therefore, when we want talking about innovation, how can you sit in a room of group of people and innovate when you have not framed it in steps of multiple hypotheses? So therefore, innovation is not something you are so intelligent that you sit over a couple of drinks and suddenly innovate. Innovation is very hard work of series of hypotheses, constantly asking questions nobody is asking, constantly experimenting, trying to make that work. You know, Apple is a very interesting example, and I want to define innovation in the way Apple is doing it. Remember, if some of you who are using iPhones, and I am, we are hugely frustrated, at least I am, with battery life. The camera is not that great, and the speed is not that great. So when 6S was launched, I wish they had improved the battery life. They had increased the screen space a bit, and they had increased the speed, and definitely the camera. What Apple did in 6S is did not meet any of my demands. And when I got hold of my 6S, I said, I don't want it. I don't want to buy it. And I started experiencing 6S, and they gave me something which I did not need. They gave me for example, they gave me a completely new way of taking a photograph. And when I experienced that new way of taking photograph, I got hooked. So therefore, Apple has moved forward from responding to customer needs to defining new customer needs and getting customers habituated to that needs because they know what the customer needs before the customer knows what they need. And that comes only through series of experimentations of the 4 new features they have launched. I think 1 is unique, the 3 will fail. And that is what Google does, that is a lot of other people do. So how much experimentation do we do? How much risk do we take in our organization? How much money do we spend in our failures? And without that, the innovation is not going to happen. The 4th piece is going to be very interesting, which is what we call the diversity. We do not have diversity in our Indian organizations. Predominantly, we are obsessed with loyalty. That I have worked with this guy for 10 years, I've worked with this guy in 15 years, this guy is finishing his 25th year in this company. So basically, we are all in a zoo looking alike. So when we are all in a zoo looking alike, how will that diversity of thought come into the organization? So assuming you cannot bring diversity of thought in the organization, how many people are you reaching out? How many people are you talking to try and get a new opinion? You know, a very interesting story on BlackBerry is the fact that BlackBerry inspiration came when he attended a Coke conference. And from a Coke conference, he had discovered that the dispensing machine of Coke, they had added a data card so that on a wireless basis, they could transfer the data. Once he saw that, he got inspired to try and create BlackBerry. Similarly, there are lots of diverse people, and we'd already talked about Steve Jobs, so therefore you have to reach out to more and more people, creative people, and ask them, how do they create? You have to meet artists. Lata Mangeshkar said something very interesting. It is so profound that if you ask me one management principle which I truly believe in, I believe in this principle, which Lata Mangeshkar defined. She said in an interview that it is very easy to sing a song which has been sung before, because a lot of people were going gaga on all these reality shows which are happening. And he said, it is very easy to sing a song which has been sung before, but very difficult to sing a song which has never been sung before. And once you understand that difference, once you understand that diversity, the fact that you need to connect the dots, you need new ideas, and you need to meet diverse people. And that's the reason you see people like Shiv moving from one industry to another industry, and that becomes quite interesting to bring new perspective to the table. That diversity is the fourth factor. The fifth factor is the constraint. Understanding that constraint is the most important element of innovation. Remember, I was talking about Sampark Foundation, my foundation trying to reach 3 million children. And when we decided we're going to spend 200 crores trying to reach that, everybody said it's going to be a waste of money behind government projects. It's very difficult to work with government. And we said, okay, so can we innovate within the constraint? Let us assume government is not interested. Let us assume teachers are not interested. Let us assume teachers are not equipped. Can we still change the lives of these 3 million people? And therefore, we said if we can create excitement in the interface of the child and the teacher, and that excitement will be so contagious that the system will change itself. So for maths, we brought toys, we brought folklore stories, we brought games, we brought all kinds of stories. And because of which the excitement suddenly started happening. And for English, we brought an audio device based on which we started teaching rhythms, we started teaching music, we started teaching riddles of noises, and then we started teaching English. You have to, if you get an opportunity of going to one of these classes, by this simple innovation, the energy level in the class went so high that one chief minister called me and said, we have a problem. And I said, what is it? The children don't want to go home because they want to play Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh is a game we play. So all these people, so Ratan Tata is a great example here. He defined the fact that when he saw 4 people on a scooter, he said, I want to build a car for them. So the constraint is the cost. And therefore, he created innovation. Same is true with Godrej. When they created this rural fridge, they defined cost as a constraint. So when you define a constraint and not fight the constraint, I wish I had more resources, that is the time innovation happens. So in summary, I would say that it is possible for all of us to innovate. Innovation is not hostage to West, or innovation is not hostage to few brilliant people. The only problem is we are lazy. We are lazy that we are unwilling to follow diligent path of innovation. And that diligent path walks through many things. Some of them are the 5 which I talked about. But the diligent path of innovation, if we follow them, then we start our journey of being innovative as an individual, innovative as a company, and definitely innovative as a country. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. Till yesterday, Rekha had given me the subject on cricket, which I had no clue about. And I was scratching my head, so I did some research, asked some people exactly what this cricket thing is. I'm not a huge fan of cricket. And then yesterday, she sent me an email saying, why don't you come in this session? And I said, innovation, oh my God. And then I looked at the list. I said, these guys are all gurus of innovation. What the hell will I talk about? So I said, maybe I take a more of a holistic view on innovation, and I jotted down some notes this morning. Look, as far as innovation is concerned, we all know what is happening around the world, be it biotechnology, genetic engineering, virtual realities, et cetera, and it is happening at such a pace that it's now becoming a blur. It's a full-time job to just keep track of even one segment of the innovations that are taking place. So it's very difficult to predict in the next 5 years, 10 years, where exactly all this is going to go. But I think it is very important for us to be mindful of the direction these innovations will be taking us. And why are we innovating? The social impact, how are we going to evolve as a society? our mindsets, especially of the new generation, how will that be impacted? Our value systems, how will they be challenged? Things like, art of imagination, right? With these iPads, with these instant gratification and instant information, are we losing out our art of imagination, like reading a book, literature, contemplation? We're so busy, our minds are so wired all the time and distracted between screens and computer screens and so many things, that are we losing that art of contemplation? Do we have that thing, or a moment to pause and to feel the present moment? A sense of appreciation. Us being here in a nice environment, we are the lucky few. There are a lot of people out there who were not so fortunate. Just to appreciate whatever we have, the gratefulness to find a sense of purpose in our lives. Again, I think it is important to understand that we as human beings are today going through this grand experiment on a global scale, and the results of which we frankly do not know how it's going to turn out. I mean, we had asbestos, or we had, I don't know, lead or whatever, and we used to think, that was good. And then in hindsight, we found out that the damage it did to our to the